It's finally my day today. As India celebrates 75 years of independence, I have the proud privilege of becoming a part of the Indian Navy's rich legacy. And it is only befitting that I come to life on the day that Goa completes 61 years of liberation from colonialism. So today's excitement and energy would be incomplete unless I take you on a small journey. An exhilarating tale of the Navy's first conflict and first landing operation of Goa that connects me to my proud past. This is the story of Goa's liberation, something that is etched into my steel that resonates deeper with my commissioning of INS Mormugao today.
The year was 1947. India was finally free.
At the stroke of the midnight hour, when the world sleeps, India will awake to life and freedom.
Yet the territories of Goa, Diu and Daman were continuing under 450 years of oppressive Portuguese rule. As India rose as a free nation, liberating these territories became a national priority. India chose diplomacy to resolve the issue with the Portuguese government. A resolution was attempted through negotiations in a non-violent manner. But the Portugal government remained steadfast and refused to surrender the territories. Meanwhile, the voices for Goa's independence grew louder across the country. An organized and dedicated anti-colonial movement emerged across Goa. But Portugal continued to disregard India's and United Nations pleas. In October 1961, Prime Minister Nehru declared, the time had come to consider afresh what method should be adopted to free Goa. In November 1961, the first shots of Goa liberation were fired, ironically at sea by the Portuguese. On 17th November 1961, an unarmed Indian passenger boat, Sabarmati, was fired upon by the Portuguese garrison on Anjadeep Island, resulting in injuries to the chief engineer. A week later, the garrison again provoked India by firing upon a group of fishing boats, killing a fisherman and injuring 4 others. By December, the situation had reached a boil, and India's patience had run out. Continuance of Goa under Portuguese rule is an impossibility, stated the Prime Minister as India launched Operation Vijay to liberate the territories on 18th December 1961. The Indian Navy, headed by Admiral R.D. Katari, was quick to respond to the situation. The Navy put together a formidable task force under Rear Admiral B.S. Soman, the flag officer commanding Indian fleet. The task force was deployed off the 3 territories, operating in concert with the Indian Army and the Indian Air Force. Goa was the center of gravity of the entire operation. Although intelligence indicated presence of 3 Portuguese warships off Goa, the only warship present in Mormugao harbor was Alphonse de Albuquerque. Incidentally, the warship derived its name from the first Governor-General of Portuguese territories in India in the 16th century. The ship had been supporting the Portuguese forces by undertaking radio communications with Lisbon. This was because Portuguese radio facilities over land had been destroyed by the Indian Air Force. She was also supporting the Anjadeep garrison, which was to see action later at noon. On 18th December, the Chief of the Naval Staff, Admiral R.D. Katari, signaled Petwa, the task force commander of Goa. Capture me a Portuguese frigate, please. Albuquerque was at anchorage inside Mormugao Harbor, getting ready to sail. The task force immediately shaped course into Mormugao Harbor at best speed, with a signal to Albuquerque: surrender or I open fire. It might be of interest that Mormugao then was an unknown harbor. When Albuquerque did not surrender, an avalanche of broadsides followed from the 4.5-inch guns of the task group. The very second broadside was a direct hit, injuring Albuquerque's captain and incapacitating several others. The task force continued pounding Albuquerque as she attempted to leave harbor and mingle among ships at anchorage. For over 10 minutes, Albuquerque was continually hit, and soon huge flames were visible midship. She soon turned towards Mormugao Harbor, hoisted the white flag, and surrendered by beaching herself. The Navy's resolute action off Mormugao Harbor had badly shaken the edifice of the Portuguese rule in India. As the Army and Air Force continued its operations to take over Goa, Navy had one more formidable task: the capture of Anjadeep Island. In the early hours of 18th December, Trishul and Mysore pounded the Portuguese garrison on the Anjadeep Islands in preparation of the landing. In an act of perfidy, the Portuguese garrison hoisted the white flag indicating surrender. Shortly thereafter, the first wave disembarked from Trishul, led by Lieutenant Arun Odetto, as the second wave, led by Senior Commissioned Gunner Noel Kelman, was closing the island. The Portuguese garrison rained bullets on it in defiance to international norms. Mysore and Trishul responded vigorously, delivering accurate gunfire through their 4.7-inch Bofors guns. A third landing party went ashore to suppress the garrison. As the gunfight continued and naval ships continued hitting positions on the island, the Portuguese realized the futility of any resistance. By 1400 hours that day, the landing parties had achieved their aim. The Portuguese surrendered, and the tricolor was proudly hoisted on the flagstaff point. The maiden landing operation by the Indian Navy against hostile forces had come to a successful close. This fierce exchange caused deaths of 7 brave sailors, whose names are proudly etched on the Anjadeep Memorial. It is befittingly symbolic that weakness at sea brought about India's colonization in the 15th century. At the same time, daring action by the Indian Navy at sea in 1961 also helped bring it to a close 450 years later. The Navy's role is not just to do with the liberation of Goa, along with Daman and Diu, but also see the nation write the epitaph on the unfinished chapter of India's colonization.
And as I narrate this story today, I am filled with part nostalgia and part pride. For the Indian Navy, commissioning of Mormugao goes beyond adding another warship. It also celebrates the deep historical connect that the Navy has with the liberation of Goa and the end of colonization. And as you gather here this evening to partake in this celebration and wish good fortune to me, please do also share my legacy, my pride, for it's a shared one. This glorious chapter of India's and the Indian Navy's history would continue to motivate me and generations of officers and sailors who sail upon me, meeting the Navy's and the nation's missions and expectations. Jai Hind.